and welcome to today's show where I will be unpacking what it means to me to be a progressive in 2025. And guys, I'll be honest, this is one of the episodes so far that I am most excited to record and then share with you guys because I'm going to share a little bit about my personal political journey and how I ultimately settled on this ideology. And I think this will be great for individuals if you're listening and you're not really politically affiliated. Maybe most of the Democrats don't speak to you, most of the Republicans don't speak to you, and you're kind of looking for politicians who actually represent everyday Americans. And that's how I ended up, guys, in the progressive wing. It feels like to me, and I'm going to share this with you a lot, it is the flank of politicians who actually understand and try to pass policies that will benefit society at large. Now, if you are also part of a group who looks at people like Bernie Sanders and AOC as like extreme leftist or you know, crazy or whatever, you know, right-wing media likes to propagate out there, I encourage you for sure to listen to this and see if what I'm presenting here seems as extreme as right-wing news outlets like to make it seem. But before we jump into that, we are going to do our quick hits of the week, starting with a very, very unfortunate story, which Trump signed the extreme budget bill that was passed by Congress. And this story to me is incredibly important for so many reasons. But one of the main reasons is this just shows why the Democrats lose all of the time. They have no fight. They get outmaneuvered and out-strategized by the Republicans time after time after time again. And when you actually have leverage, when you have a moment to help and stand up for your constituents, you fold like the cheapest piece of furniture that you've ever seen. Guys, Democrats, leadership, we do not want capitulation. I know I've said this endless times, but you guys come off all the time looking so weak and so feckless. And what's really unfortunate about this budget bill, I'm going to break down a lot of things, but another thing that's really unfortunate with people like Chuck Schumer supporting this is the people who would be most directly affected, which are the federal employees. Their union came out and told Democrats, please do not vote for this. And then Chuck Schumer went on air and said, like, we're trying to protect the people, but they told you don't vote for it. Guys, this stenches so clearly of donors running our government. I'm sure Chuck Schumer got some pressure from his very rich donors saying you better pass through this budget bill because, guys, this budget bill heavily benefits the rich. And it cuts programs like SNAP benefits, Medicaid, and other programs that help usually those who are the most disadvantaged in society. They're cutting those with the goal of transferring that money up to the top. That's basically the goal of the entire administration. And part of it also, guys, is the move to privatization. So they're trying to privatize things like Social Security and all of these different, what they like to call entitlement programs. But when they become privatized, the goal then is to make profit. So everything then becomes more expensive. So this whole system, guys, is completely benefiting the rich off the backs of the working class, essentially. Now, gonna end with a little positive here. First of all, only one House Democrat. Remember, there are way more people in the House than the Senate. There's 435 in the House versus 100 total Senate members. Only one House Democrat voted for this. So that is a huge shout out. Also, Chuck Schumer and Senate Democrats voting through this bill. There were 10 of them. I'm going to put them on the screen now so you guys can see their names and do your work primarying them. But there were numerous people in the House saying right now they would write a check to get Chuck Schumer out and primaried. And guys, this is where it gets spicy. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is from New York. Chuck Schumer is from New York. There is now momentum building to primary Chuck Schumer via AOC doing the primary. So that would be a huge shift for the Democratic Party. I think right now this vote is going to be terrible for the American people, but I think the Democratic Party, guys, as we know it, died with that vote. because they went directly against constituents. They went directly against what the workers told them to do. So I think we're going to see the moving or the changing of guards away from people like Chuck Schumer. Guys, even Nancy Pelosi criticized this vote. That's where we're at. But I think a lot of the old guard is going to be moved out because people are tired of this. And I think this vote is kind of the nail in the proverbial coffin. But time will tell. Guys, I encourage you to read more about what this budget bill entails. It is truly demoralizing. And another thing it does, guys, is it basically cuts the spending power away from Congress and puts it in the hands of Trump and Elon Musk. So representatives voting for this basically are also saying, my job is pointless. Here you go, Trump and Musk, do whatever you want. So I don't know why you ran for office to then give up your power. But there's a lot to that bill. This whole episode is not about the bill, but please do be aware of what that says as we move on to story number 2. And this is one that's more just embarrassing. Musk and Trump promoting Tesla, so doing basically a car show at the White House. And guys, it's just more evidence that they're just using their power to try to enrich themselves. Tesla stock is tanking because Elon Musk's behavior has been troubling. A lot of people are boycotting Tesla because when you promote Nazi type of propaganda, people aren't going to like that. And there is no obligation for people to spend money in certain industries. If we don't want to spend our money in certain ways, that's called capitalism. And that's how it works. But they shot basically an embarrassing kind of car commercial, I would say. And one of the things I laughed at about all of this, right? Trump doesn't believe really in climate change, right? The big part of Tesla is the renewable green energy, but Trump is all about drill, baby, drill. And the Republican Party, generally, their leadership hates renewable energy and green energy. So it's all laughable to me about the contradictions here that they're doing. But once again, guys, it's so clear as day. They are just trying to make money. That's all this presidency is about. That's all really Donald Trump's life's all been about, is like making money. All right, moving on to story number 3. This is a very serious one. This goes to a free speech issue. But there was a protester. His last name is Khalil. He's currently facing deportation for protesting. So a clear First Amendment free speech violation. The White House is trying to state that he was ahead of protests where pro-Hamas propaganda was distributed, but there's no evidence at this point. Republicans, guys, constantly, and I think this story is just part of this to kind of buttress this, they either ignorantly or purposefully, it depends on the individual politician we are talking about, but they conflate Palestinian people and being pro-Gaza protests, with the terrorist organization Hamas. Guys, those are two separate things. People are protesting the stopping of slaughtering of innocent children and kids. That is not the same as being for Hamas. But Republicans, like I said, either intentionally, some of them, or just ignorantly because they don't care and don't want to do their research or learn, they are conflating those two, but they're not the same thing. And they're conflating those two basically to justify genocide that we have seen in Gaza now for a while at this point. Now, Khalil, he's actually married to an American citizen, American woman who is 8 months pregnant. So you have that on top of the disaster. He is a green card holder, so he is a permanent resident. Now, to be clear, green card holders, so permanent residents, can be deported, but only in very, very, very severe cases where they are national security threats. And there is no evidence that this man is a national security threat at all. This definitely seems more like a free speech issue and them wanting to quell speech more than anything else. And I'm going to finish with this quote by Jacob Hamburger. He is a visiting assistant professor at Cornell Law School. Targeting individual protesters for just protesting is highly unusual and something that we haven't seen before, even under the first Trump administration. So guys, this behavior is extreme. They are trying to silence speech, which once again is hypocritical, because they always complain nonstop that somehow the left is trying to silent speech when that is the exact thing they are doing here, and in fact trying to deport someone for exercising their free speech rights. So that is an important story to follow, because guys, if Khalil is deported, if they are successful in doing this, there are millions and millions of green card holders in this country. So that opens up the door to any permanent resident, as long as they can say, broadly speaking, there's some kind of threat to just be deported, which is terrifying state. That is terrifying. All right, moving forward to the fourth story. Guys, I know it's like I'm dropping bombshell after bombshell, but this is where we live in Trump's America right now in 2025. Trump called critical news organizations, specifically CNN and MSNBC, illegal.
And I believe that CNN and MSDNC, who literally write 97.6% bad about me, are political arms of the Democrat Party. And in my opinion, they're really corrupt and they're illegal. What they do is illegal.
Guys, not only are news organizations like CNN, MSNBC, and I would prefer independent media who is critical of Trump not illegal, it is necessary to preserve democracy. If you do not have media outlets that are critical of leadership, that leads directly to fascism, guys, and authoritarian rule. You can't question the leader. What are we talking about here? That is an insane message. And I want to also just say, if you want to point to the news organization who is lying, you would look no further than Fox News, who had to pay a $787 million. Sorry, the number was so big that I stumbled over it. But $787 million settlement for lying about voting fraud. They are the ones who's lying, but he's not going to come after them because they lick his bootstraps 24/7 and like help propagate his nonsense. But I want you guys to also remember his inauguration. You had Elon Musk, you had Zucks, you had the TikTok CEO. I think there was executives from Google there. They are trying to control the media infrastructure, and they're going to basically ensure that these social media organizations get rich. And they know, guys, like Musk, although he's kind of fumbling the bag, with Tesla, but they know that these policies are going to benefit the 1%. Trump's America benefits the 1%. It makes the rich richer. So these media moguls are basically cozying up to Trump, knowing it's going to benefit them. They don't care, guys, about how the media infrastructure impacts society. They care about how much money will be in their pocket. So this is troubling because it's not the first seed, but it's another seed out there where we may have a party who's going to actively try to silence opposition. And that is really concerning. Now, in the rest of this speech, he lied about having a huge victory. He won the popular vote, guys, by less than 2%. Biden won the popular vote when he won by far more than 2%. And if you want to talk electoral college, Obama and Clinton in recent history had a far bigger landslide in the electoral college than Trump did. But he's just an incredibly sensitive, weak man who gets offended when anyone talks bad about him or criticize him. That's basically it. And he's trying to quell people who do criticize him because he can't handle it due to his ego. Fifth and final story. AOC plans to join Bernie on his oligarchy tour. So this is actually good news, guys. Bernie alone, so far on this tour, he turned out a crowd of 4,000 in Kenosha, Wisconsin, 2,500 in Altoona, Wisconsin, and that is a city with less than 10,000 residents. He also turned out a crowd of 9,000 in suburban Detroit. And guys, these numbers are actually higher than were expected, according to his team, because they didn't really promote this to the level that they could. It was a lot of like last minute stops. So these numbers were very big considering the lack of kind of promotion that went into it. So some of the upcoming dates, Denver, they are coming to Denver on March 21st. I expect a huge turnout. Denver is a pretty progressive city. And they also plan to go to Nevada and Arizona as well. So keep a lookout for that. I want to play a little example of what kind of Bernie's tour, like what the feeling looks like. And you'll be able to see a little bit of it in this clip. And when you're watching this clip, I want you to let me know, or like think about this to yourself. Does he seem like this crazy leftist that right-wing politicians and news outlets make you think? Or does he really just seem like someone who's trying to connect with voters, connect with average Americans, and actually help and actually figure out the problems facing Americans?
So what does living paycheck to paycheck mean? Tell me. Raise your hands. It'd be loud. Yes, right here. It means surviving. How you survive. Yes. It means little money. What does it mean? Yes. Stress. Hold it one at a time. Yeah. Survival. Exhaustion. Well, like fear. Fear of what? A fear of everything.
Every time I listen to Bernie speak, I get more enraged at the DNC for how poorly they fumbled the bag when it has come to this man's political career. I imagine the Democratic Party would be in a much different place today had they coalesced around Bernie Sanders and less so around people like Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden and more corporate Democrats. But that leads me, guys, into today's main part where I'm going to unpack what it means to be a progressive. And I want to actually start with my political journey, if you don't mind indulging me a little bit, because I think it's important to be transparent and to share my background because, guys, people's backgrounds, their kind of journeys, that ultimately develops their views and their opinions on the world often. So really, I wasn't really politically engaged that much until 2016 when Trump won the election. I was a Democrat who believed mainstream media nonstop that kept saying, right, Hillary couldn't lose. There's no way she would lose. So I wasn't really following. I knew that Trump had that incident, the grab him by the you-know-what incident. And I was like, nah, like there's no way someone who could say and do something like that can be elected to the head office of the land. But I realized I was in the wrong. I was not given all the information. I was listening basically to mainstream media, and obviously Hillary lost that election and Trump won. So that was the initial kind of spark for me to be like, I need to be more engaged with what's going on here. I went to Obama's first inauguration because of the historical impact, but really outside of that, I had voted most of the time, but that was really it. I didn't really know what I was voting for. I think maybe a lot of young people, or maybe even older people out there, you may still be in that boat right now. But during COVID, guys, politics kind of became my hobby. I got older, and I wanted to understand more about the political system, and I had time at my hands to do so because we had COVID, so I was locked up in the house. And I had known that like politics obviously mattered. It impacted parts of society, but I didn't take the time to figure out how until, like I said, COVID kind of took off. So I began listening and reading different articles, listening to different podcasts, different shows, and neither party appealed to me. So first of all, the Republican Party, their history of the Southern strategy, mass incarceration, like the Republican Party was never on my board as it currently stands to align with my values. It just doesn't. And then the Democratic Party, a lot of them were very corporatist, especially when it came to the economy. They aligned with Republicans often. And I was like, So most Democrats don't speak to me, and Republicans sure don't speak to me. But then I came across more progressive lawmakers like Bernie Sanders, and it started to open my eyes that politicians aren't all the same, first and foremost. And there are politicians that will actually speak on matters that will materially impact my life and the life of people like me, the life of an average American. So I'm going to play this clip from a 2020 speech where Bernie Sanders kind of talks about his movement.
We are putting together an unprecedented grassroots, multi-generational, multiracial movement. It is a movement which speaks to the working families of this country who are sick and tired of working longer hours for low wages and seeing all new income and wealth going to the top 1%.
And this was incredibly inspirational to me, not just this specific clip, but hearing him speak, because it makes me feel, and I hope some of you feel out there as well, that like politics matters and our government can actually work to make life better for people rather than making it just a way to basically provide money to the rich. So his policies and the policies of other progressives made sense to me. They were practical. They seemed common sense. And they were anti what I had heard from mainstream media, which was Bernie Sanders is this crazy extreme left and AOC is this crazy radical. I actually took the time to listen to what they were saying, and it was not radical to me whatsoever. And media guys was basically lying to maintain the status quo. So progressives are radical in the sense that we want policies that benefit society at large. And the status quo, meaning the elites, the rich, the people in power with money, they don't want to change that status quo. So they are perpetuating this extreme left idea so that you don't actually listen to what these politicians have to say. But they are actually there to serve us, which I cannot say about most mainstream Democrats and Republicans. Now, I also started to think as I became more engaged here, what was my specific role? Because as of today, even when COVID started, I live a pretty privileged, well-insulated life where a lot of the politics don't directly impact me, but I was starting to realize they impacted other people. And then this kind of political phrase or calling point really, really drove home the message where I need to step up and I need to do more.
Take a look around you and find someone you don't know. Maybe somebody doesn't look kind of like you. Are you willing to fight for that person as much as you're willing to fight for yourself?
I think that message, guys, fighting for someone you don't know, it's one of the most beautiful messages in politics because it doesn't allow you to disengage. Right? If you're in a position like me and like you will generally be fine no matter what, cool, you've made it to that point. There are millions of Americans who are not there, where a lot of the policies that are passed will directly impact their ability to pay their rent, to have hot water, to retire with dignity, to not have to work until they die, to access, food, things like that. Like, we need to fight for people we don't know if we are in a privileged enough position where legislation is not impacting us to a way where it's interrupting our lives, right? Now, I want to jump ahead to progressive policies. So all of this is great. I shared a little bit about my journey and how I got here, but what is it all about? What are we trying to push as progressives? And I like to think of these policies as policies that are most beneficial for society. So which policies will benefit most people, not just which policies will benefit corporations, the 1%, and capitalistic infrastructure, which seems to be the current government we live under. All right, first major policy, and these are in no particular order, guys, necessarily, but universal health care. We are one of the only, I think we are the only actually developed country who does not have universal health coverage. It is insane that we allow anywhere, the low end that I found, guys, we allow 26,000 Americans to die every year because we don't guarantee healthcare. It is insane. Healthcare should not be for profit. We should not have these insurance companies nickeling and diming us to make as much money as possible and enrich the pockets of already, multi-millionaire CEOs. It is insane. Universal healthcare, it should be guaranteed through the government. It should be a single payer system. And then it would cut out that insurance companies and all that nonsense that we have to pay, guys. And universal healthcare ultimately would be cheaper, not more expensive. Yes, when maybe your taxes go up, but you wouldn't have co-pays. You wouldn't have those deductibles that are taken out. Guys, look at your paychecks right now. Things are already getting taken out for health coverage. It would transfer over to taxes and it would just be lesser because it has already been studied that universal one-payer system would be a much cheaper system than what we currently have, and it would provide more coverage for people. So that is one huge policy, universal health care, guaranteed health coverage for all Americans. Another one, the climate crisis. Guys, 97% of scientists are screaming from the rooftops that like we are in a huge climate crisis, and if we do not do anything about it, we may not have a world to live in. I know that sounds extreme, but guys, I'm going to listen to the experts in this field who study it for a living and not listen to just random Republican lawmakers who just want to enrich themselves by drilling and pillaging the earth to make as much money as possible. So things like the Green New Deal proposed by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez would not only help save the globe, but it would generate many new jobs for people because we would now be entering the renewable energy space and at higher levels than we currently do. And what's also just frustrating about the United States and this administration's inability to shift towards renewables is this is inevitable, guys. We are going to have to switch to renewables. The quicker we do it, we can actually hop ahead or jump ahead of other countries in that industry, and it could be a huge profit generator for the United States. But this administration is so short-sighted. They're really just focused on drilling, and they're ignoring the catastrophe, the climate catastrophes that will cause, and the long-term benefits of actually switching to green renewables earlier rather than later. So, climate crisis, that is also a policy. Criminal justice reform, that is also a progressive policy. Guys, we all kind of live in a state where we know the criminal justice system is corrupt and it doesn't provide equal justice and that it's broken and that it leans heavily to those who have money and it over criminalizes the poor. Yet we just let this happen. Why? Like, why do we just let this happen? It's insane. Progressives are aiming to do criminal justice reform to address this issue because, guys, the law should be applied evenly. If you have 34 felonies, it should not be a situation where there's like no question. Of course, you're not going to go to jail. Whereas someone who has been caught for a third time robbing food from a grocery store to try to feed their family, there's like no question that they will probably go to jail. We just have a ridiculous criminal justice system that needs to be addressed. Another progressive policy. And guys, as I go through these, think if these, like I said at the beginning, are these really extreme or do these seem like policies that would benefit us as average Americans? Really think for yourself and break away from what a lot of mainstream media is just telling you, because mainstream media benefits from the status quo and it does not benefit from these policies that would benefit me and you. I want you guys to understand that. Supporting LGBTQ plus rights, that is definitely a hallmark of being a progressive. I think we are seeing now with the attack on the trans community, and I know certain states are now proposing basically eradicating same-sex marriage. So that's where they're coming next. I am very clear on this. I do not think it's a complicated issue. No one should be discriminated against based on how they were born. Gay people, trans people, members of the LGBTQ plus community have been around since the beginning of time. No writing of legislation will undo that. So at the end of the day, it's just hateful, discriminatory practices. Everyone should have equal access and equal rights based on how they're born. Like that, it's just ridiculous to restrict laws for that reason. Now, another big one, and this is the last one before I'm going to talk about some of the popularity of these policies, is eliminating money from politics. And guys, in my opinion, this is the biggest one. Until we eliminate Citizens United and stock trading amongst our elected representatives, we have legalized bribery. And legalized bribery and money, unfortunately, is always going to win at the end and corrupt enough of our elected representatives that we aren't going to have a true democracy. So if you are a progressive and progressive caucus, a big thing that they push is eliminating that money from politics. So super PAC donations, large corporate donations. Bernie Sanders is big on ending Citizens United and also getting rid of stock trading in Congress. Now, guys, I want to be clear. The Republicans do it more, but most of the Democrats also participate in this legalized bribery. That is why someone like Nancy Pelosi, when asked, should stock trading be illegal for members of Congress, she giggled and laughed it off because they think that their position is to enrich themselves first and foremost and then serve the American people as an ancillary thing, which is obviously not the way it should work. Now, we are going to move forward to some of the polling on these different positions because once again, guys, I am told, I'm sure you have been told, these are crazy extreme positions that no one could believe in and just could not happen. Let's start with universal health care. 62%. So that, guys, is a majority. That is a pretty big majority in 2025. 62% of Americans believe that healthcare should be guaranteed by the government. Okay? So it is not only a position that is morally correct, healthcare should be a right, but everyone, a majority, not everyone, sorry, that's hyperbole. A vast majority, because 62% is a big majority, guys, in 2025, believe that this should be guaranteed. I'm going to get to why all these popular policies haven't been passed later, but 62%. Climate change, guys. I already said 97% of climate scientists agree that human activity is contributing to climate change, but also 2/3 of Americans are in favor of developing alternative sources of energy like wind and solar. So once again, not only is that the moral thing to do to address climate change, but it's also very popular. Moving on to criminal justice, equal justice under the law and criminal justice reform. 81% of voters in 2024 were in favor of criminal justice reform. So not only, once again, it is the right policy, it is the moral policy, it is what would be best for society to have more equal justice under the law. 81% of people are asking for that reform. LGBTQ plus rights. This is from the Public Religion Research Institute. 67% are in favor of same-sex marriage. So once again, that is not only morally right. Once again, people should not be discriminated against based on any characteristic that they have when they were born, and that includes how they identify. So that is an overwhelming majority. Also, who favor same-sex marriage. Unfortunately, guys, something that is scary right now is that 67% number, which historically had been on the increase or on the incline, one may say, has actually been decreasing recently. So that is something to track. That is something that progressives, I promise you, will continue to fight regardless of that popularity amongst the American electorate. And then eliminating money from politics. This is one of the most popular policy proposals. 7 out of 10 Americans believe there should be a limit on election spending. 8 in 10 say that Congress members do a bad job of separating personal financial interests from the role in Congress. And 63% believe politicians just run to make money as their primary objective. Right? So guys, we understand through all this that the system is corrupt. It's not working for us. The progressives are trying to, sure, you want to call them radical, but they're trying to fix this broken system and make it work for the average American. That's what these policies aim to do. Now, being a progressive is obviously not all rainbows. I want to talk a little bit about some of the issues that progressives face. But before I get into this, guys, one of the things I hate that I'm seeing in media, and I think a lot of you do in journalism, is the false equating of oh, this problem is the same as this problem. In my opinion, guys, the problems I'm going to go through here that the progressives are facing are not human rights violations like the Republican Party is trying to face, right? Republican Party is trying to strip rights from people. That's not what progressives are trying to do. We're trying to increase rights for everyone, but there are some problems, but they do not equate to like rampant bribery in politics, or like I said, trying to strip rights, trying to eliminate school lunches, things like that, right? Those are more extreme, but these are some less extreme problems that we have to combat. The first one and the biggest one, guys, is just there are not enough progressive members in positions of power, right? Now, Chuck Schumer may have just lit the Democratic Party on fire with his recent vote, and we may as a shift to that. But right now, guys, the progressives don't really have political power. And because they don't take large corporate donations, they also lack money power, which we know in capitalism, money basically rules all. So they're basically having to run purely based on their messaging, which is very difficult in, our current political state to win an election and get your message across that way. Now, progressives, guys, are also anti-status quo, which does not benefit those in power. So it makes it harder to break through in mainstream media, right? You're just categorized or extreme or crazy, and it's harder to get on networks because you're trying to basically upset the apple cart. You're trying to change the status quo. So that is also a problem. Kind of part of that, guys, is lacking the media infrastructure as well. So comparing to the right wing, when Trump says something, so right now, they are trying basically to cut Social Security. So Fox News has kind of, or privatize it. So Fox News has kind of turned now to saying Social Security is a bad thing. So the right wing has this infrastructure where, Trump says something and then they have different outlets, podcasts, everywhere that, parrots that same message, and it works. And you get like that right-wing infrastructure, and then everyone, the Republicans, are just saying the same thing, and their supporters are just saying the same thing. The left wing needs to build up a similar infrastructure to help with their messaging, particularly since they don't have the money. So that is something I would like to see developed a little bit more. And then last but not least, I may get some blowback from this, but there is, in my opinion, too much language policing on the progressive side. At the end of the day, guys, it doesn't matter who is like the best progressive, right? We need to assume the best of people. And if people make what you deem to be a mistake, or if you have a different opinion, like, it should allow for disagreement as long as the disagreement is baked in reality and fact. I am not saying if you're a progressive to push back on insanity. We need to call out insanity when it's insanity. But when someone uses the wrong pronoun accidentally, I'm not talking about people doing it intentionally or screaming out, derogatory terms on the House or Congress floor. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when someone legitimately makes a mistake. The approach cannot be to ostracize them. It should be to educate them and understand they weren't doing things hatefully. So I think that is a big problem that progressives need to kind of thwart, is that kind of attacking mindset when someone says the wrong thing. And once again, when they say the wrong thing unintentionally because they were ignorant and didn't know. Now, I want to debunk a few narratives as well, because the media infrastructure has done a great job of making people who want to make our lives better feel crazy. And at the end of the day, guys, progressivism is about a life of dignity for all and working together to combat the top 1% who are hoarding wealth and making life harder for the average American. Now, what progressivism is not, it is not giving everyone free money or handouts. That is not true. It is about making things more equitable so people have an equal opportunity. It is not letting all of the criminals out of jail. So when we are talking about criminal justice reform, it's more as, can we decriminalize nonviolent offenses? Things like that. Like, people should not be in jail for marijuana use. Those are the time of criminal justice reforms we are talking about. We are not talking about letting out like serial killers after they serve 10 years. No, that is not the progressive stance. Now, the progressive stance, you'll also hear this big government. Like, oh, they just want big government intruding in on our lives. Well, guys, it depends on the policy. Government is there to help us. So sometimes you want government involved, like when it comes to things like national security, when it comes to things like funding firefighters or the police force, things like that, right? We need government involvement. I would say we would need government involvement, or we would not need government involvement when it comes between a woman and her doctor and her right to make health decisions, right? I don't think government should be involved in that, but some Republicans would argue they should. So, right, this big government term, guys, you have to look at it policy by policy and determine if that policy is better for society. It doesn't matter if it's quote unquote big government or not. It just aims to divert voters away from good policy. That's what that term big government does. At the end of the day, guys, where I stand is I believe the Progressive Caucus. So that is the caucus in our government that I believe in. It's the policies that I believe in. They aim to do the most good for the most number of people in society. They do not prioritize billionaires. They do not prioritize corporations. They do not prioritize the elite. They are not focused in enriching themselves through stock trading or bribery through corporations or super PACs. They seem to me to be the only flank that we have as an average American who will actually serve our interests and is not interested in enriching themselves through government. And that, guys, is ultimately how it is supposed to be. So if you guys would like to learn a little bit more about progressive leadership, in the description below, I am going to provide a link to the Progressive Caucus. You can see the House members who are represented there and the policies that they stand for. I also want to play you guys this quick clip. This is from Jasmine Crockett, representative from Texas. She has been a new member to the Progressive Caucus. She was elected to office in 2021, but has been picking up a lot of steam recently in media due to her willingness to fight and stand up to the Republicans.
I am so excited that my colleagues across the aisle care about sexual abuse, considering that the front runner right now for presidency is kind of just been found liable of sexual abuse. Every time we seemingly have a hearing on voting rights, we talking about the fact that people are cheating. So let's talk about who's cheating. I got a few articles. But when we start talking about things that look like evidence, they want to act like they blind. They don't know what this is. These are our national secrets. Looks like in the to me.
I will reiterate to Democratic leadership, we as voters love that so much more than having a representative who does nothing and just sits there and waits for other people to speak and is docile and isn't really passionate about representing their constituents. So just a note to Democratic leadership, more of Jasmine Crockett, less of Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and people who don't really seem excited to be fighting for their constituents. Now, progressive media that you guys can listen to in addition to this, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. I would love that. But the Majority Report is a huge progressive media YouTube channel. Sam Cedar is the one who hosts that, and he recently did the Jubilee debate where 20 Trump supporters took on him as the progressive. So that is a great show to watch. The David Pakman Show is a huge progressive media outlet as well, independent media. I listen to him a lot. He puts out a lot of content. And then the Bitchuation Room. That is by Francesca Florentini. She actually has a little background in comedy as well, but she is definitely a fighter, but she'll throw in a little comedy here and there as well to lighten the mood when needed, but a progressive and a fighter at heart for sure there. So those are 3 resources you can learn more in addition to going to the Progressive Caucus. And now I'm going to finish with our shout out of the week, which is going to be from John Larson, who called out Elon Musk for not showing up to provide answers regarding Doge.
I'm sure he's a genius and is a very credible person because of the wealth he's accumulated. But that does not put him above the law or the responsibility to come before this committee in this Congress. If he's so great, if these plans and all the fraud and abuse that he's found are so eminent, Why isn't he here explaining it?
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, we got more fight. I don't know like what's gotten into some Democrats recently. I don't know if it's like how drastic things are right now in the state of the country, but hopefully they are learning that we love this fight. We're seeing it more. We're not seeing it enough, but people like Larson, Crockett, AOC, Presley's been fighting. Bernie obviously fighting. We need more of that, guys, because we elected you to fight for us. And if you're not going to fight at this time, I don't know why you're in office. So guys, that wraps up this episode where I unpack what it means to be a progressive. Please let me know what you think below. Do you agree with me in some of the policy positions? Do you maybe disagree and have some pushback? If so, what do you have pushback on? Let me know. Anything you guys think in the comments. And until next time, thank you guys for listening.